everyone. Welcome to our series of interviews with the NCHC Board of Directors candidates. Today I'm here with Andrew Martino, and we're here to have just a brief conversation about the reasons and interests that he has in running for the board. Andrew, thank you for taking the time out of your day today to just share a bit about yourself and your vision and goals for NCHC, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you very much for having me, Mary Beth. My name is Andrew Martino. I'm Dean of the Clark Honors College at Salisbury University, where I'm also a professor of English. So I'm also a member of the Publications Board as well as the Places Text Board. I am past president of the NRHC, so I've been involved in honors for quite some time.
So can you tell us a little bit about why you're interested in serving as a board member?
Sure. When I made the jump from a program director to a dean, there was quite a bit of a learning curve about how the two different programs operate. And it's really more than just a matter of numbers. So for me, when the opportunity to serve on the board came up, it seemed to be the right time for me to move into that position as well. Having 2 years of being a dean under my belt and 8 years of being a program director in honors, I think prepared me. I didn't want to run for the board before I was prepared. I wanted to I was very happy working at the regional level. For me, this gives me an opportunity to work with a lot of different people on a lot of different initiatives. I believe in honors education. I believe that it can change the trajectory of students' lives as well as the professionals in that particular field. I also believe that honors has an obligation to look beyond our borders, to look beyond honors and kind of set the tone for higher education writ large. So this is a way for me to become more involved in something that's bigger than me, that's bigger than my own college and my own region. So it seems to me that it's something that it's a way for me to give back and to contribute to a larger conversation.
Thank you. We've done some strategic planning in the last couple of years, and one of the things that continues to be part of our discussion at the board level is where do we see ourselves in random elements of time? So in your thought process, where do you see NCHC in 5 years? And what would you do to get us toward that goal?
That's a great question. I think we were really going along fairly well, and then COVID hit. And I think COVID has really taken us all for an unimaginatively complicated loop. I would personally like to see us to be concentrating more on diversity and inclusion. I think that is the only way forward for NCHC and for honors as a kind of larger group. This has got to be the fundamental problem that we tackle in the future. To have people who may not see honors as part of their plan, their academic plan, be part of that particular academic plan. So in 5 years, I'd like to see NCHC be much more inclusive, be much more diverse than what it already is. I think we do a marvelous job with education. As I said a moment ago, I really think that we set a standard for education, for higher education across the board. Now it's time to really concentrate on some of those things where we fall short. Umberto Eco said that as intellectuals, we have to look at our own ideologies just as hard as we look at those that we don't subscribe to. I think as members of NCHC, as members of honors, we have to find those shortcomings and really not be afraid to tackle those. And I think diversity and inclusion is one of those aspects. So one of the things I'd like to see NCHC and how I would try to help is to work to see more people of color, to see more diverse backgrounds, including LGBTQ+ and other backgrounds come into the fold and really take on leadership positions. I think that the position paper that was recently put out by NCHC was a really good starting point on how we can start to recruit students for honors. But we need to take that as a starting point and really go forward.
So you've already alluded to one of the pillars of the strategic plan, diversity and inclusion. So the third question may have already been answered. So I'll let you just expand on it if there's more to your interest in the strategic plan. Are there any other strategies that you'd like to contribute to?
Yeah, well, I think, as I said, diversity inclusion has to be our number one. I mean, I think everything stems from that. But I think that I mean, all of them are important, but for me, it's the partnership one as well. So it's that advocacy and partnership. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. I think we have to look beyond our own borders. Salman Rushdie calls it a kind of ghetto mentality that, you know, we get very comfortable with ourselves and with the people that we know. And one of the things that attracted me to honors and that I like most about it is its interdisciplinary nature. But we're all talking about honors and we all know kind of how honors works. I think we really have an obligation to spread beyond the borders of honors and really lobby for honors education to raise the level of conversation of higher ed across the board. I think diversity and inclusion and the advocacy and partnership are interrelated. I don't think you can have one without the other, or you shouldn't. I think both of those should work together to form a kind of a new way of seeing honors itself, as well as its role in this post-COVID world.
You just have you have great ways to transition to every question. So the next question is about COVID and the response that NCHC maybe could have taken as we transitioned, or things that you've seen particularly on your campus or within your network as COVID impacted you and the things that maybe NCHC could have done. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts forward?
It's really difficult. I mean, because we are in such, you can't divorce COVID from the political climate that's happening in this country. I think for me, it's just impossible to do. I think, as I said earlier, honors has that obligation to raise the level of conversation. I think we have an ethical and a moral obligation to change the narrative. And this goes from everything from wearing masks and maintaining social distancing to how we approach Zoom sessions for honors. I think everybody is suffering from Zoom fatigue at the moment. I know I am. I'm not one that believes that the face-to-face class can be exactly replicated online. I do think that you lose something. That's the kind of traditionalist in me. But I do think that we should take COVID as, you know, as a starting point. Okay, so we have this pandemic that has really been catastrophic, and I don't think that that's too strong of a word. So what are we going to do with that? And I think it's very easy to retreat into ourselves, retreat into our own programs and colleges, and try to get our own students, you know, to survive this mentally and physically. But I think what NCHC can do is to help with some of those things. And I think NCHC started doing this really, really well when they had some of those online seminars or early in the summer, I think it was. I couldn't attend them all, but I did attend a couple. And from what I understand, they were really well received. And I think sometimes, even though I just said we have COVID fatigue, and I do believe that, I do think that reminding ourselves that we're here for one another becomes really, really important, because it's really not just about the educational aspect, but it's about mental health. So the fatigue affects us mentally. If we can't get out of our own homes, if we can't get out of campus, if we can't see our students or our colleagues, it's a different dynamic. And I think honors has the opportunity to really to take that challenging dynamic and have something positive emerge from that. So, you know, some of the things that I think NCHC can do is to continue to hold those kind of programs, whether it's via Zoom or some other creative aspect for its members, not only as professional members, but for the students as well. One of the things I'm finding on my campus is the students are there, they're showing up, but everyone looks exhausted, as well as the faculty and the administration. And I think that that's natural. I don't think we pay, to be honest, as much attention to the exhaustion aspect that we should. So I think that NCHC we should come together and find ways to combat the mental health fatigue that we seem to be feeling. If we don't get a handle on that, then everything that we do begins to dwindle away and spiral into an even greater uncertainty. So I think that mental health aspect becomes really, really important. I would love to see NCHC maybe bring some speakers throughout the year and sponsor some speakers, or we could do a Zoom session with some of these speakers that maybe we couldn't afford to get in person, to be honest. So there are aspects of COVID that I think have been positive as well. forcing us to reimagine how we think and how we think about education. So I'd like to see, this is the time where we really should rally around one another and have this greater sense of community. I'm not saying that we're not doing that, but I want to reiterate that those are some of the things that I believe. I hope that answered your question.
I think that it's indicative of everything that the staff has been working to do, and I think the current board and committee chairs are trying to do that as well.
I agree.
But you allude to the exhaustion piece, and I think the fact that NCHC doesn't rely heavily on volunteers does lend itself also to that volunteer fatigue. On top of Zoom fatigue.
You're right. We live in a 24/7 society, and with email now, and we're all teachers and staff members, and we know this, that there's no point where we can turn off for the weekend.
Right.
And I'll come back on Monday at 8, and we're always working, and that does take its toll. So the big question is, so where does thinking take place? If we're always working, when do we have a chance to reflect? And it's that kind of meditative thinking that I think honors really, really excels at, not only just the practical, but that meditative reflective thinking. And I think because of COVID, we have lost some of that, because we feel we have to be constantly out in front of COVID as much as possible. Because again, there's this spiral notion that if we aren't at least make ourselves feel that we're in control, then the alternative it's incomprehensible.
I think that's true. we try to outthink it, and
we do,
not necessarily possible.
Right. So
you can't anticipate every direction. So.
We can't. It's impossible.
So, with that impossibility in mind, take COVID away and think that COVID is over, or we're dealing with the results of COVID, not necessarily we're in the midst of it. During your term as a board member, what do you feel are the most important traits of a board member? And then what are those traits that you embody and can bring to the table?
For me, one of the most important traits of the board members is being familiar with the aspects of honors education, some of the things that we stand for, some of the things that we practice. One of the things I love about honors is that we steal from one another, and we actively encourage that, right? We're constantly sharing information. That doesn't necessarily happen in the disciplines. So, honors is really this really invigorating community where we're always constantly talking about ideas, and we're sharing ideas and taking ideas from one another. I think that board members have to be, and I think that they are, I'm not suggesting that they're not, they have to be in tune with that. They have to be in tune with the interdisciplinary nature of honors, with those small classes, those discussion-based classes. It really is about the high impact practices that honors does it really, really well. I think for me, my background, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English. And I found myself halfway through my master's degree, it wasn't quite enough for me. I was interested in history. I was interested in anthropology. So I ended up getting a PhD in comparative literature, which is by its nature, kind of interdisciplinary discipline. So for me, honors was really a natural fit. When I stopped being a chair of an English department, I went right into honors. And it was the best decision I ever made, because I get to talk to students from all across the disciplines, and we're having these really rich conversations. For me personally, it's the closest I'll ever get to the European Enlightenment and living during that time of discovery. We're surrounded with philosophers in that sense. And I love that. I love that process of discovery that happens. So I think board members really should be in tune with that. I know that I will be, and I will work really, really hard to ensure that a couple of things. One, that we maintain that interdisciplinary perspective. I don't think that we should, and this has been a bone of contention for a couple of years. I think the professionalization of honors is a mistake at this particular time. I think we do a really good job doing what we're doing now. So I would resist the kind of professionalization momentum that sneaks up from time to time. And I also think, this is something I'm really passionate about, besides the diversity and inclusion aspect, is talking with other constituencies beyond honors. And I really think honors should be the role model of higher education, something I alluded to earlier, but it's something that I work really hard to make sure that people not only know this is what honors is, because I think there's a lot of people who don't realize what honors is. Certainly when I'm trying to recruit new students, they think it's more work and that the level and the intensity are going to be such that they're not going to be up for it. I think one of the things when I'm trying to recruit is students don't believe in themselves enough. So I think that we should provide those opportunities for students to believe in themselves, and you know, students shouldn't be afraid to fail. There is this sort of fear of failure that we have in society. I think honors, and this is what risk-taking is in honors. Charlie Slavin talked about it a long time ago in one of the publications, but honors means putting yourself at risk. And by that, I mean to say putting your thinking at risk. So I really would like to see us branch outside of honors and talk about what we do in honors with other constituencies in higher ed. And I think we should have an influence on that. I sound like a broken record, but I really think it's about raising the level of conversation in this country about higher ed and its purpose and its value.
Thank you for that. The final question we had, I think you've addressed in a kind of in an overarching way, but I'll leave it open for you to address if you'd like to add anything further on diversity and inclusion, specifically to ways that we can be a leader in that area.
I think the position paper is a great step forward. I think that we are now actively recruiting leaders at NCHC to be people of diverse backgrounds, people of different colors and different persuasions. All of that is a step in the right direction. But it's not a magic button where we automatically hit a quota and we're fine. I think that this is something that we constantly have to work at. It's like dealing with race in the United States. It's not something that we get over. It's something that we're constantly confronting and we're having conversations. I'd like to see NCHC have more open forums about diversity and inclusion, not just within our own ranks, but within the country. And this is part of what I meant in my previous answer, you know, not only driving the narrative about education, but the civic narrative as well. What does race mean in this country? We're at a pivotal time, not only because of the upcoming election, but what's happening with Black Lives Matter and some of the, you know, defunding the police and questions like that. These are serious questions. I'd like to see honors take a more active role in that. And it's not just about the pedagogy, although that's a big part of it, but it is really about the civic engagement that I think we should double down. I think we are doing it, and I don't mean to say that we're not doing it, but I think that we can't stop. We don't reach a certain point where, okay, now we go on to the next strategic plan. This has got to be a constant struggle for us, because it's a constant struggle for the country.
Thank you. Any other final comments as we conclude our conversation?
I would just say that it's an honor to be able to run for the board. As a member of the publications board, I'm constantly at the pub board table during the conferences, and it's a great way for me to meet a lot of people. And so I get to hear a lot of people's stories about what they do at their own campuses, what they're frustrated about, what they really are excited about. And for me, joining this larger conversation it's humbling in many ways, but it's really something that I think I can make a difference in. And I hope that I have the opportunity to work with the board in the future.
Again, thank you for your time this morning, Andrew. I really appreciate all of the insight that you have and the things that we could work with moving forward. Thank you, NCHC Network. We will be in touch with you in the month of December with your ballot, and we encourage all of you to vote and vote often.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.